Rachel never thought a simple weekend getaway would change everything. She was the steady one among her friends, responsible, cautious, always careful not to cross lines. When her best friend Emily invited her to stay at her family's lake house for the weekend, Rachel was excited to escape the busy city life of Chicago and spend some relaxed time before Emily moved away for a new job. She imagined peaceful days by the water, late-night talks, and catching up on old memories. Emily's family was warm and welcoming, and Rachel immediately felt at home. Emily's older brother, David, was around too. He was quiet but kind, tall with a calm confidence that made Rachel feel comfortable. David had been through a tough divorce, so Rachel didn't expect much between them beyond friendly smiles and polite conversation. But Emily had mentioned a surprise guest coming along, a woman named Claire, someone new in David's life. Rachel was curious, but unsure what to expect. The first night at the lake house was lively. The fire crackled and the sound of laughter filled the room. Rachel noticed Claire the moment she walked in. Claire had a gentle presence and a soft smile that made her seem both mysterious and approachable. When Claire whispered to Rachel that her intentions were harmless, Rachel was caught off guard. There was something about the way Claire's hand brushed lightly over Rachel's arm. It sent an unexpected thrill through her. At the same time, David's eyes met Rachel's from across the room with an intensity she hadn't noticed before. It was confusing and new. Lying awake that night, Rachel's thoughts raced. What was happening? She felt drawn to Claire's gentle touch and David's steady gaze, but she also knew this was forbidden territory. David was Emily's brother, and Claire was supposed to be just a friend, or at least that's what Rachel wanted to believe. The feeling was magnetic and confusing at once, pulling her into something she wasn't sure she was ready for. The weekend was only just beginning, and Rachel felt like she was stepping into a world where the rules were unclear. She wasn't sure if this was a test of her heart or a dangerous game. But one thing was certain: nothing would be the same after this weekend. The unexpected invitation had opened a door to emotions she had never faced before, and Rachel wasn't sure if she could walk away. By the second day at the lake house, the calm of the water and the peaceful trees no longer matched the storm inside Rachel. The quiet beauty of the place clashed with the confusing emotions building in her heart. What started as a weekend getaway with her best friend, Emily, had turned into something much deeper and far more complicated. Emily had gone into town for errands that morning. Leaving Rachel alone with Claire and David, Rachel found herself in the kitchen, pouring coffee when Claire walked in. She smiled in that soft, knowing way and leaned against the counter. Her presence somehow calming and unsettling at the same time. "You seem quiet," Claire said, stirring her tea. "I guess I'm just thinking," Rachel replied. She didn't want to say too much. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable last night." Rachel hesitated. "No, it's just... I didn't expect any of this." Claire reached out gently and touched Rachel's hand. "It's okay. Sometimes things just happen. They don't always have to make sense." Rachel pulled her hand back slowly, her mind spinning. It wasn't just Claire's touch or her words, it was the way David had looked at her the night before. It wasn't just one person or one moment. It was the whole situation. Later that day, David asked Rachel to help him carry firewood from the shed. They walked in silence at first, the air filled with early autumn chill. As they worked side by side, Rachel felt his quiet energy. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it felt like every word carried weight. "I'm glad you came," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Rachel looked over at him. "I almost didn't. I know this weekend's been strange," he said carefully, "but I've enjoyed being around you." Rachel's heart skipped. His tone was gentle, but his meaning was clear. There was something between them, even if they hadn't spoken it aloud. As they walked back toward the house, Rachel felt the distance between them shrink, not physically, but emotionally. David's glance lingered just a little too long, and when their hands brushed accidentally, neither of them moved away. That night, the three of them sat by the fireplace. Emily had gone to bed early, tired from the day. Claire curled up on one end of the couch, her feet tucked under her, while Rachel sat near the fire sipping wine. David sat across from her, watching the flames. The room was quiet except for the crackling fire. Claire broke the silence. Funny how weekends like this bring things out of people. David glanced at her, then at Rachel. Yeah, you learn a lot without saying much. Rachel's stomach twisted. She felt like she was caught between two people who both saw parts of her she wasn't ready to reveal. Claire's openness. David's quiet presence, it was overwhelming. I think I'll head to bed, Claire said, standing slowly. Good night. As she passed Rachel, she rested a hand lightly on her shoulder and whispered, Don't be afraid to feel something. It doesn't have to be wrong. Rachel didn't answer. When she looked at David, he was watching her again with those eyes steady, warm and full of something she didn't know how to name. I didn't plan this, he said after a moment. I didn't either, she whispered. They didn't touch. They didn't speak again. But something shifted between them in that silence. It was the kind of moment that changes everything, even if nothing is said out loud. Rachel went to bed that night not knowing what would come next, but certain that nothing would be the same again. On the third day, Rachel woke up with a strange feeling in her chest, the kind that sits quietly but doesn't go away. The lake house was still and calm, the morning fog floating above the water like a dream she hadn't quite shaken off. She stared at the ceiling for a while before finally getting up. Her thoughts were too full. She wasn't used to this kind of emotional mess, especially not with people so close to her world. Claire was already in the kitchen, humming softly, brewing coffee like nothing had happened. Rachel walked in, her heart thudding a little faster, unsure how to act. Claire turned and smiled. Sleep okay? She asked. Rachel nodded. Yeah, I guess. Claire handed her a mug, their fingers brushing again just briefly. Rachel pretended not to notice, but the warmth from the touch lingered. Claire's tone changed slightly, more thoughtful now. You've been quiet, she said. You're thinking a lot. I can see it. Rachel looked down. She didn't want to admit how confused she was about David, about Claire, about herself. None of this was expected. This weekend was supposed to be simple. A goodbye trip with her best friend before things changed. But now everything felt tangled. I don't know what I'm feeling, Rachel said honestly. Claire took a breath. You don't have to decide anything. Just be honest with yourself. That afternoon, Emily suggested they all go kayaking, and Rachel was relieved. Maybe the open water would help clear her head. Out on the lake, the air was crisp, and the sunlight made the surface sparkle. David ended up paddling beside her, while Claire and Emily drifted a little farther out. I meant what I said yesterday, David told her quietly, about being glad you're here. Rachel turned to look at him. There was something different in his voice, gentler, more real. I didn't expect this, she said. Neither did I, he replied. But I've felt something for a while now. Rachel swallowed hard. Claire, she's been kind, but I don't understand where I stand with either of you. David sighed. Claire and I aren't together. Not like that. We've been friends close, but it's complicated. She's good at seeing people, knowing what they need. But that doesn't mean there's a future there. With you, it's different. Rachel didn't say anything right away. The kayak rocked gently, the water lapping at the sides. She looked over at Claire in the distance. She was laughing at something Emily said, her voice carrying across the water. That night, things felt quieter between all of them. Emily went to bed early again, worn out from the day. Claire sat by the fire reading a book, and David was fixing something outside. Rachel stepped out to get some air and found David on the porch, watching the sky. You okay? He asked. I don't know, she answered honestly. I feel like I'm in the middle of something I didn't ask for. David looked at her, and for once the silence between them felt safe. You're not in the middle, he said. You're just feeling something real. That's not a bad thing. Rachel hesitated. But what happens now? David didn't move closer. He just looked at her with steady eyes. Nothing has to happen unless you want it to, but I'm here if you do. Rachel went back inside, unsure whether her heart was calmer or more confused. Claire looked up from her book as she walked in. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. Rachel nodded. "I think so." Claire gave a small smile. "Sometimes we can care about more than one person. It's not wrong. It just means your heart is awake." Rachel lay in bed that night, hearing those words again. Your heart is awake. It was a strange comfort because in a way she had felt asleep for a long time before this weekend. And now everything felt sharp, vivid, alive. She didn't have answers, but she was starting to understand the questions. By the final morning at the lake house, everything felt different, yet no one had said much. The air was cool, the trees quiet, and the sky was soft with the early light. Rachel stood on the deck with a blanket around her shoulders, holding a warm mug of coffee. The lake stretched out calm and wide, but inside her, the emotions were far from still. Claire joined her quietly, a calm presence as always. She stood beside Rachel, not saying anything at first. After a while, she glanced sideways and asked, "Did you sleep at all?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Not really," Claire nodded. "It's hard when your mind won't rest." Rachel sipped her coffee. "This whole weekend. It's been a lot." Claire didn't disagree. "But I don't think it was a mistake." Rachel turned to her. "You knew this would happen?" Claire met her eyes gently. "I didn't plan anything, but I felt something in you. Something stirring. Sometimes people meet at just the right time when their hearts are open." Before Rachel could reply, the door opened and David stepped outside. He looked at both of them and gave a quiet smile, one that said he also knew things had changed. He joined them on the deck without saying a word. For a few long minutes, the three of them stood in silence watching the lake. It wasn't awkward, it was peaceful, even though emotions swirled beneath the surface. After breakfast, they started packing. Emily was cheerful, talking about her move and her new apartment. Rachel smiled and laughed when needed, but inside she was pulled in different directions. She kept thinking about the moments she had shared with Claire, the long looks from David, and the way both had opened up something in her she didn't know existed. As they loaded the car, Claire pulled Rachel aside. "I want you to know something," she said, her tone softer than usual. "No matter what you decide, I'm glad we met. And I'm glad you felt something. That's a rare gift." Rachel's eyes stung a little, but she nodded. "I don't know what I'm going to do." "You don't have to know," Claire said. "Just don't ignore what you felt." Later, as they all hugged goodbye, David took a little longer. When he hugged Rachel, he held her gently and whispered, "If you ever want to talk or anything else, I'm here." On the drive back to Chicago, Rachel stared out the window, the trees passing in a blur. Emily talked now and then, filling the quiet, but Rachel barely responded. She was lost in thought. This weekend had opened a part of her she hadn't explored before, emotionally, spiritually, even romantically. She had felt seen in a new way. Desired, yes, but more than that, understood. The situation was messy. Nothing was clear. But for the first time in a long time, Rachel didn't feel stuck. She felt something alive in her chest, even if it hurt. She knew that whatever she chose, whether to reach out to David, to explore what she had felt with Claire, or to step back and give herself space, she had changed. And that change wasn't going away. Back in her apartment, the city noises replaced the soft lake sounds. But Rachel stood at her window that night and didn't feel as alone. She had been drawn into something unexpected, something that felt forbidden, but also honest. Not every connection fits the rules we expect. Some people come into our lives to show us who we are, even if they don't stay forever. Rachel didn't need to choose a path yet, but she knew now she wanted more than she had been living with. More feeling, more truth, more life. And maybe, just maybe, that weekend had been the beginning, not the end.